Hello YouTube, welcome to another episode of Sipping with Simone. So today I'm going to answer the question that I often get, which is, should you go to law school? So since I figured I'd be talking about law school, I decided I would drink out of my McGill law mug. It's kind of hot. My McGill Law Journal mug that I got for being on the Law Journal. I was on the Law Journal at McGill as on the management section. So as a junior manager and then as a senior manager. So yeah, I went to McGill, the Faculty of Law at McGill University, and I graduated with a Bachelor of Law and Bachelor of Civil Law in 2013, December 2013, and commencement or convocation was in June 2014. So we're coming up onto about 4 years since I graduated law school. It seems like that time has flown by. And yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I don't currently practice law. I decided against it, largely because I still don't feel like law is for me. And I slowly realized how much I hated law and how much I didn't want to be a lawyer. And I'll probably do a video on that another time. But when people find out that I not only have one law degree, I have two, and that I went to McGill, I often get the question, should they go to law school? What is law school like? Etc. I also recognize that a lot of the information on the web and a lot of the information on YouTube is from an American perspective, and it's often hard to get a Canadian view on whether or not to go to law school. So here I am. I was actually going to write this all down as notes so that it would be a little bit more streamlined and linear, but I figured, I'm tired. I'm tired. And I'm just like, why don't we just have a little conversation? So the first thing I will cover is, the question, should you go to law school? The answer is, and I'll tell you the answer, though you can stop watching, but you can continue watching if you want to hear the reasons. Should you go to law school? It depends, right? Look at that. You get your lawyer answer. It depends. Maybe. I don't know. I can't tell you what you should or should not do. What I can do is give you a little bit of insight from my experience and what I've learned, so that you could go on and do more research and make your own informed opinion. I think that's the most responsible thing I could do in a video, as opposed to telling you what you should or should not do. The reasons why you shouldn't go to law school, we could start there. So reasons why you shouldn't go to law school, and a lot of law school myths exist out there. You'll find that a lot of people who tell you that you should go to law school, like your mom, your dad, your great aunt Mabel, Uncle Jim Bob, all these people who tell you that you should go to law school are people, often enough, who have never set foot inside a law school. And so it's so interesting how a lot of the people who will have advice for you at this critical time in your educational trajectory don't even know what they're talking about. So I would take their advice with a grain of salt. You'll hear stuff like, you could do anything with a law degree. That is not a reason to go to law school. A law degree should not be seen as, at least in a prima facie, there's another legal word for you, prima facie, prima facie, never knew how to pronounce this Latin word, but it means on the surface, at the face of it. In a prima facie sense, you should not look at a law degree as some kind of ubiquitous door-opening degree. A law degree is not a liberal arts degree. It's not like an undeclared major degree. It's a professional program, okay? While it is true that many people who possess law degrees go on to do a panoply of different things, from journalism to starting a business to acting to goodness, the founder of TMZ, Harvey Levine, he's a lawyer. Like, everything. You'll find lawyers everywhere. While lawyers are often found everywhere and have been able to do much with their law degree, you shouldn't go into law school thinking, you know, I could do anything with this degree. On the contrary, what I found as somebody who is trying to find an alternative career path to being a lawyer, what I find is that your law degree could work against you sometimes. What I find is that when you meet prospective employers or people, oftentimes there are assumptions made about you that you could use to work into your favor, right? So people are going to assume that you're smart. People are going to assume that you write well and that you could read and synthesize large amounts of information, which is true, right, if you have graduated with a law degree. So sometimes these assumptions could work in your favor. Other times these assumptions do not work in your favor. And a lot of times with your law degree, unless you know how to spin it, you'll find that some employers might find you overqualified, or they think, why would you want this position? Why would you want this job? Why are you getting out of law? And so there's a lot of maneuvering and spinning and repositioning yourself that you have to do. You'll find that just because you have a law degree doesn't mean you could just go knock up on the door to work at Facebook or a tech company. While many organizations like to see a law degree, it looks good that you have a professional degree and what's considered in many places a graduate degree. Your law degree is not some kind of, you know, I could do anything with degree. Does that make sense? So no. So one good reason not to go to law school is to think, oh, I could do anything with a law degree. There's so much more to that story. Another reason not to go to law school is to think that, you know, if I become a lawyer, I'll have a stable career and I'll be rich. That was actually maybe one of my reasons to go to law school. Certainly it wasn't uppermost in my mind, but it was one of my reasons. I don't come from a rich family, and my parents are first generation, well, immigrants. They are Jamaican immigrants. I'm a first generation Canadian. I was born here. And so, you know, my parents were always telling us to, like, you know, get an education, get a profession, because in their minds, that was the way to financial success and security. And I'm sure many of you have probably heard the same thing, especially if you're the children of immigrants. However, law, unfortunately, is not as stable as we think it is. Way back when, once upon a time, we'll call that time the 1980s, perhaps the 1970s, and a little bit into the 1990s, the legal profession was, I would say, probably a really stable profession, or could be considered as one. You would go to law school, and there was reason to believe that you would graduate and that you would secure an articling position and that you would secure a first-year associate position or some kind of entry-level lawyer job. Times have changed. And recently, certainly when I started law school, in Ontario at least, there was this articling crisis whereby there were too many law graduates and not enough articling positions. And insofar as you finished your articles, a lot of those students who are now lawyers could not find lawyer positions. The fact of the matter is, in Ontario, and I could speak for Quebec because I, you know, studied there and familiar with the legal landscape there, and really across Canada, but Ontario and Quebec would be the two largest legal markets. Lawyers are unemployed and underemployed. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people, many of my classmates, in fact, I would like to think, the great majority of my classmates are practicing as lawyers. I'd like to think that they are happy. I'd also like to think that they are relatively financially stable, at least perhaps more so than the general Canadian population. However, there are enough stories I have heard, and there are enough people, I'm not just saying a handful, but a sizable amount of people who I meet, I'll bump into, I keep in contact, I'll talk to them on LinkedIn, and they're not working as lawyers, even though they are called to the bar and they are technically lawyers. One of my good friends from law school told me that he was only making about $40,000, $43,000, $47,000 at his job. Before that, he was working at a firm where they were paying him minimum wage. Lawyer, called to the bar, paid minimum wage. And I told him, we did not go to law school for minimum wage jobs. But you'll see that. And you'll see that because the market is so saturated, even now, even though the articling crisis has been somewhat assuaged by the law side of Ontario, they have this new legal practice program. So another way to get become a lawyer. So yes, so the articling crisis has not ceased, but it has eased. That said, the market's still saturated, and because the legal profession knows that the market is saturated, it creates the perfect storm and the perfect circumstance for exploitation of law students, articling students, and lawyers in their first, second, third years of call, right? Lawyers in the earliest stages of their career. What do I mean by that? Well, a few years ago, I heard of a law firm looking for an articling student, and they said, well, we're not able to give you a salary. However, we could pay for your Metro Pass in Toronto. That was it. These are people graduating with huge amounts of debt and wanting to work and pay down some of their debt, but some of them are only able to find articling positions without a stipend, without any salary. People or organizations only willing to pay bus passes. And they know, a lot of these organizations know that even though their compensation is grossly inadequate, that some poor law student will take them up on the offer. Why? Because articling is still a requirement in Ontario and in Quebec and many other jurisdictions in Canada to become a lawyer. And two, because there simply aren't enough articling positions out there. And there simply aren't enough lawyer positions out there, especially in great metropolises and metropolitan cities like Toronto, Montreal. I mean, if you really want to become a lawyer, your best shot, more and more, is to move further up north or to a rural community, not necessarily to stay in Toronto. So that's the hard truth that a lot of people don't think of. A lot of articling students are articling for free. They're doing that. Articling in Ontario is an internship that you have to do, a legal internship you have to do in order to become a lawyer. Sorry, I didn't explain that. And a lot of people are doing that internship for free, you know, and these are people, right? When you go to law school, most of people who have graduated from law school already have an undergraduate degree. Many already have a doctorate degree, and then law is their second career, and then a lot of them are having to article for free. Not nice. So all that to say, the market is not what it used to be. And so if you're thinking I'm going to come out of law school and have this cushy job, it's not necessarily the case. Those who do have a cushy job, many of them hate it. I mean, I have many friends who have articled with large national firms. These are the firms where you're making $90,000, $80,000, $90,000, maybe even $100,000 to start in your first year of call. So it's really nice in terms of salary, and you're able to pay down a lot of debt, but they are selling their souls in order to make that salary. It's not a 40-hour work week when you're an articling student or a young lawyer at these firms. Perhaps there are anomalies and exceptions, but for the most part, we're looking at 40 to 80 hours a week. And if you divide the amount of hours you do by your salary, it honestly, in many of the cases, works out to you making maybe $45,000, $50,000 in a 40-hour a week job. It's not like you're getting paid exorbitantly more because you work in a law firm. So that's another thing a lot of people don't think of. And there's also a lot of competition, and a lot of these law firms are not the warmest and friendliest. Some, depending on the firm, it could be very cutthroat, especially for women, especially for people of color, especially for people from marginalized communities, whether LGBT, Aboriginal, etc. So the market is not what it used to be. And so if you were to go to law school, I would really encourage you to look at the current market. More on that later. in terms of how you figure that out. So my first reason, I can't remember what my first reason was. Why did I tell you not to go to law school? Anyway, my second reason was market. Another bad reason to go to law school is the idea of, you know, oh, I don't know what to do with my political science and philosophy degree. What do I do with my liberal arts degree? I'll just go to law school. I have a lot to say on that. Lots to say, because I was one of those people who graduated with a double major in political science and philosophy from York University, Glendon campus. Go York! Glendon! Yeah, repping my school. I loved undergrad, and obviously I loved it so much that I was able to do very well in undergrad, and I had very strong academic performance, which, you know, obviously helped me get into McGill. So having good grades help. So one trend that I see with a lot of liberal arts grads is like, I could either, you know, go into academia or I'll go into law. I'm not going to get tenured. I'm not going to get paid much in academia, so I'll go into law. That's not a good enough reason to go into law school. I know many liberal arts grads have made that decision and just gone into law school and it worked out for them. But I'd still say that's not a good enough reason to go to law school. Why? Law school should not be seen, kind of related to the first point, which I finally remember now, as like, you know, as a plan B, you know, catch-all thing. Like, you know, if all else fails, go to law school. We really need, and the reason why I want to do this video is because we really need to change our thinking around law school, because I think too many people like myself are going into law school with the wrong conceptions and notions and coming out jaded. And had we as a society been more forthright about what law school is, and as opposed to holding it up as like the be all and the end all and the answer to everybody's prayers and the thing that works for everybody and, you know, the thing to do. If we stopped doing that and were much more realistic with people, I think a lot of graduates who are struggling with all of their debt right now and struggling with their careers would be all the much more better off had they had all the information and the tools beforehand. So no, if you have a liberal arts degree, sure, go to law school, but only because you're actually interested in becoming a lawyer. Not only in law, but in becoming a lawyer. So let's talk about that. Reasons why you should go to law school. You should go to law school because you want to become a lawyer. Let me sip on that. One of the reasons why I wanted to go to law school is because I saw family members involved in their own legal disputes, and I wanted to better understand the process, and I wanted to better understand what they were going through, and perhaps even eventually help them once I became a lawyer. It was a very noble reason to go into law school. Another reason I wanted to go into law school was because I thought to myself, well, you know, my parents always reminded us that we were Black people. So I have a brother and a sister, and my parents always reminded us that we were Black children in this country, this cold country, and that not everybody would like us, and that some people would be mean to us based on the color of our skin. And so as Black people, and more so as a Black woman, it would be critical to have an education, to have a profession, and ideally go to law school. Nobody forced me to go to law school. My parents obviously didn't force me, but certainly, and any immigrant child can relate to this, the only options that were, I wouldn't say available to me, but that were shown to me, that were constantly preached at me, was basically law and medicine. I eventually internalized this, those lectures and those values, and by the time I was 22 and I was ready to apply to law school, I thought to myself that law might be the best route because it would allow me to protect, it would allow me to act as a defense. It would allow me to, it would be a shield for myself as a woman of color, but also it would be a sword in terms of helping gain and enforce and acknowledge the rights of others who may or may not be in similar situations. So I had these lofty, noble ideals and ideas for going to law school, you know, like Michael Jackson, heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. And that's basically, I mean, not the Michael Jackson part, but that's basically what I wrote in my personal statement. And when I got feedback on my personal statement for law school, they said that it was personal and passionate, and answered, you know, why I wanted to go to law school very well. And yet, by the time I got into second year of my law school, I found those reasons not to be enough. I mean, that's personal to me in the sense that I also discovered who I was as a person, more so being in law school. But definitely a reason why you should go to law school is because you want to be a lawyer, not simply because you want to study law. I don't think it's enough to go to law school just because you like law or you're curious about law. I would say if you're curious about law, go to the library and read a book. If you want to know about promissory estoppel, if you want to know about subrogation and novation and different vehicles for business, etc., all those wonderful, exciting, tantalizing topics, go to the library, go ask a lawyer friend, go ask a law student, Google. But if you simply want to go to law school for the pure academic study of law, okay, I should amend that. Not that you shouldn't go, but it may be challenging for you depending on the law school you go to. Obviously, and this is why I'm amending what I just said, many people go to law school and then go on to do their LLM, their Masters of Law, or their SJD or PhD in law. So obviously the academic pursuit of law is okay. But you have to remember that law, the faculty of law, law school, whatever name it goes by, it's a professional program, which means that they have as their mandate to prepare you, to train you to be a lawyer. Again, it depends on the school you go to. My school, McGill, McGill is like a whole other story. It's in its own category in terms of what it trains you. To this day, I don't even know what it really trains you for. All I know is that we get good training at McGill. Many people who are legal academics, especially in Quebec civil law, did do their law degree, their civil law degree at McGill. McGill is very good at training legal academics. McGill is very good at making us think about the whys of the law and the underpinning of the law and the philosophy of the law, the thinking behind the law, not so much in actual black letter law. There are other law schools who focus much more on black letter law, so it obviously will depend on the school you go to. And certain law schools will train you better to be a lawyer, that's a fact, than others. And certain law schools will train you better to be an academic than others. But those are really the two things that a law school would train you for. Law school will not train you to be a journalist. Law school will not train you to, work in international development. Law school, by and large, will train you to be a lawyer. And if you go there simply as thinking of it as an academic pursuit, you will, one of several things may happen. You will leave disappointed because they'll find that a lot of the activities there are geared to make you become a lawyer. So you'll find yourself out of place in third year or fourth year if you're at McGill. Or you might just find yourself ultimately funneled into the whole legal recruitment process, whether OCIs, on-campus interviews, or cours au stage, which is what we do in Quebec. So, yeah, it's not just because, I want to learn about law. That's what I learned. It's because you want to be a lawyer. And if you don't want to be a lawyer, this is the hard truth. You probably are wasting your time going to law school. Yikes, I know. I don't know what else to say on that topic or how else to unpack that. Another reason to go to law school. Oh, well, one thing, let me say this before I forget. So I know, there's one girl at my workplace. Sorry, my hair's a little bit nappy. There's one girl at my workplace who, she was finishing up undergrad, and she told me how she wanted to go into international development work. and how a lot of people are saying that a law degree would be really helpful. Here's the thing. I didn't even get to touch on tuition yet. My brain is going in so many different directions. Here's the thing. There are, like I had mentioned, a law degree looks really good, and it's a reputable and respected degree. It lends credibility when you put it on your resume. That's a fact. However, if you want to go into international development studies or many other career paths, there are cheaper, quicker, and just as credible ways of going into those career paths. What do I mean? Like, let's say you want to work for United Nations. I don't know what the United Nations is looking for, you know, but I do know that the United Nations has an internship program for people who have graduated from law school. But law is not the only way to get there. You may be able to get to the United Nations with a Master's of Law and maybe doing some field work and some research and some internships. I'm just thinking to myself that law is such a huge investment, personal investment of time, money, and just resources in general, energy, that if there's things you want to do, try to figure out if there are ways you could do them without a law degree. Because you may be surprised in knowing at the end of the day that while helpful, a law degree was not necessary. That's what I would say. I think about, goodness, a lot of novelists are former lawyers. A lot of chefs are former lawyers. Is that to say that you need to go to law school to become a chef? No. Probably would be better, a better use of your time to just go to culinary school. If you want to be a novelist, go get Bachelor's of Fine Arts, Master's of Fine Arts, do a writing fellowship, something of the sort. But don't look at law as, okay, my launch pad into this off-the-cuff career path, an alternative career, because law is a springboard, but sometimes it's not a very good one. That's what I would tell you. Okay, other reasons to go to law school. Go to law school because, yeah, that's really my only reason, because you want to be a lawyer. I don't even know any other reason why you should go to law school. Don't go to law school because well, I already touched that, like an intellectual exercise. Yeah, it'll be like that at times, but it's not. You have to understand, okay, so for a lot of you trying to make this decision, a lot of you don't know what law school is like, or what to expect, or like, what it's like. Okay, or the repercussions and consequences thereof. I will admit, because I'm not the greatest proponent of law school, hope I don't sound overly negative, but I really do want to give you like a really real perspective on law school. Law school is, well, for me, it was the worst academic experience of my life. I hated law school. Not because of the school I went to, in case anybody from McGill Law is watching this, any faculty members. Not because of McGill. It just wasn't for me. And because it wasn't for me, it was so incredibly painful that, and I barely passed, that there are times, there are times when I am sitting by myself and I think to myself, oh my gosh, can you believe we actually finished law school? There's so many times where I was sure I was going to be on academic probation. But by the grace of God, I somehow passed. Maybe one day I'll share those stories with you. But, goodness, what do I say? Yeah, sorry, I'm still recovering to this day. I know a lot of people who I speak to, a lot of my friends, it's just like we're still recovering from law school, from the barreau du Québec, for those of us who did it. My goodness, it's still, I have friends who still have nightmares, and they're like, it's 4 years out. What was my point? My point. Wait, I talked about reasons to go to, oh, okay, so what's law school like? Law school is very expensive. Law school is very expensive. I went to McGill. McGill is one of the cheaper law schools in Canada. Actually, you get in my opinion, you get the biggest bang for your buck. Because it's in Quebec, the tuition price for law school and just for university in general in Quebec is the lowest in Canada. Ho ho. So that's why I went. One of the reasons why I went. I only applied to one law school, actually. So I'm trying not to get off a tangent. But basically, I didn't do my LSATs. I was doing my LSATs, and my LSATs test results were not what I needed to be. Initially, I had in mind that, you know, look at all my straight A's and A pluses. I'm going to go to Harvard or Yale Law. But you need your LSAT to go to these places. I was writing my LSAT, and I was not scoring in the 90th percentile. Or like a lot of these places were like 95th percentile, 97th. I was scoring more like in the 60th. And so standardized testing is not my thing. And I was just like, you know what? I guess I'm not going to go to Harvard or Yale. So to not do your LSAT, that really limits you to like 2 law schools in Canada. That eliminates all the law schools in the States, basically, and most of the law schools in Canada, except 2, which would be the University of Ottawa Civil Law Program or McGill's Trans-Systemic Common Law Civil Law Program. I did not want to go to Ottawa. Still do not want to be in Ottawa. Did not want to go to Ottawa for civil law. In my mind, I was just like, civil law. Civil law is only practiced in Quebec. I'm a Torontonian. I'm an Ontarian. No use just doing a civil law degree. Although, I mean, if you were to do a civil law degree, you could also do your common law degree right after. They have a bridging program. So I just went to McGill because I knew I'd get my common law degree. And it was just, for me, an added bonus that I would get my civil law degree. And it was a good bang for my buck. My tuition each year was $7,000 Canadian. Which is significantly cheaper compared to many other places in Canada and definitely in the States. U of T, University of Toronto Faculty of Law, last I checked, their tuition was about $30,000 per year. $30,000 Canadian, which I think is absolutely criminal. I wrote a blog post, maybe I'll post it somewhere, and maybe I'll post it down below about how I think law school is much too expensive and how the cost of law school affects access to legal services, access to law, legal accessibility, just in the sense that law becomes classist. When you're charging $30,000 a year for law school, who is going to be able to pay that except the elite, right? Those who come from poorer backgrounds, immigrant backgrounds, where your parents didn't make much, or I'm the first person in my family to go to university, first person in my family to have a professional degree. Where are we going to find that money, right? So if not for the elite, for those who do want to go, you're going to have to incur a huge amount of debt, probably in the form of a line of credit or OSAP and other types of student loans. And that shackles you, and it's going to affect how you begin your legal career. And will probably have a bearing on where you end up practicing, because no longer will you be able to afford these wonderful human rights positions and internships that often don't pay very well. They're not very lucrative. You'll probably be more enticed to work for the larger firms that will be able to pay you more, and you'll have to sell your soul. So law school is very expensive, and given the expense of law school, the investment of law school, I'll call it an investment, you want to really, really make sure you want to be there. You want to really, really make sure you want to be a lawyer. You want to really, really make sure that this is what you want to do. You want to have a really good idea of what law school is. You're going to want to speak to other lawyers if you know of any. I know that's easier said than done for a lot of people, but if you know of lawyers, ask if you could spend the day, the week at their law firm. Certainly one of my professors in undergrad, his wife is a lawyer, so he arranged for me to spend the day with his wife at where she was working. I should have taken that as a clue as why I would hate law. I was so damn bored at her place, but in my mind, it was like, okay, this is just her job. It could get better. There are other things out there. It never did get better. But at the time when I was 22, if I knew then what I know now, about law, I probably still would have gone to law school. Truth be honestly told. I had nothing else to do. Horrible reason to go to law school. But we all, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but we all have things we have to go through to get to where we need to go, right? Because it's such a huge investment. Again, that goes back to my point about trying to find, like if you want to do something off the beaten path, find cheaper ways to get there, because law is a very expensive way to get there. Law school is incredibly boring. I only know 2 people who have told me that they love law school. Every other person, including lawyers, current law students, certainly my classmates, we all hated law school. We all hated law school. Now, I don't think everybody else hated it the way I hated it. Like, I would come home and cry. Not every day, but definitely in my second year of law school, I had, towards the end, I had a meltdown on this very couch in Montreal. And I was crying and praying, and like, I can't do another year and a half of this. I was weeping, like, I cannot do another year and a half. Yeah, law school is incredibly boring. I heard one lawyer describe it as, it's like eating 3 bowls of sawdust for your meal. Like, 1 for breakfast, 1 for lunch, 1 for dinner. I've heard it from even a Supreme Court Justice, Justice Abella. I remember the Black Law Students Association of Canada had one of their national conferences in Ottawa. I remember her, even her saying that law school, she didn't like law school. It's kind of an accepted thing. It's really bad. Law is a little bit masochist in that way, where it's kind of accepted that you're not going to like it. In any other profession, if you hate something, it's an indication to leave. But in law school, it's not enough of an indication. So it's probably one of the reasons why I stuck with it, because I'm like, oh, I hate it, but everybody else does. It's normal. So I'll continue. You don't want to go to law school and hate it. I don't want your story to be my story. I want you to go to law school and thrive and flourish. But I don't think everybody should go to law school. The personalities in law school. It depends on the law school you go to. So you might be thinking, should I go to law school? I'm such a nice, sweet, gentle person. I don't know if I'm ready for law school. Depending on the law school you go to, you might be fine. Certain law schools are more competitive than others. At McGill, we're just like United Nations. We get, well, the United Nations don't really get along, but we were just a family at McGill. If I needed notes from somebody, sure, I'll send you my notes. If they needed notes from me, sure, I'll send you my notes. Nicest people at McGill Law, like nicest people, smartest people I've ever met, and the nicest. Other law schools, I heard stories about people hiding books from the library, people ripping pages out of books, textbooks that are on reserve. That kind of foolishness did not happen at McGill, and if it did, it didn't happen enough for me to hear about it. So it depends on the school you go to. Lawyers are nice people. Many of them are nice people. Honestly, lawyers are some of the most ethical people you'll meet. I know there's this whole stereotype that lawyers are crooks, but given the code of conduct that lawyers have to follow, the rules of professional conduct in Ontario that lawyers have to follow, lawyers tend to be some really upright, ethical people, at least professionally. So if you're somebody who really believes in, like, you know, rights and like ethics and integrity, you will be surprised. You may very well find yourself a place in law school. I'm trying to think what else I need to tell you if you should go. Should you go? I don't know if you should go. I don't know. Think about it. Think about it. Look at your finances. I honestly think your finances will be the biggest piece for you in this thing, right? Look at your finances. Okay, what I'm going to say is probably not even really practical, but if you're able to do this, it will save you a lot of grief. Take it from me. If you are looking at your finances and you cannot pay for law school in cash, right? If you cannot pay for law school without depending on any sort of loan or credit, I dare say don't go to law school. That's what I would say. In 2018, I don't know if it would be the wisest decision for you. Why? Because unless you were to incur a really limited amount of debt, but if you have debt from undergrad and you're going to incur debt, significant debt for law school, my goodness, you're not going to pay that off in a long while, and that could have consequences for starting your life, right? A lot of people who go to law school, how old are we? We're in our prime of our lives. We're in our mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s. We're trying to get married. We're trying to start families. We're trying to buy a house. And then you have all that educational debt on top of it. It's really bad timing. So my suggestion would be, if you have to incur a huge amount of debt, I would think twice about going to law school. Knowing the market, how it is as it is, it would be too much, it would be too naive to incur $90,000 of debt from law school and just expect that you will get a job commensurate with your debt to help you pay that off. More often than not now, there's a very good chance that you will not get a job, or if you do, I hope you do, it's gonna be drops in the bucket for you to pay. Like, I just read recently, Michelle Obama and Barack Obama just recently finished paying off Harvard Law. They finished Harvard Law like 25 years ago, guys, 30 years ago. If you're willing to be paying off this debt for 30 years, all the power to you. But if you do not have that financial backing, I wouldn't go. That would be the biggest determination, I think. What else should I tell you? Should you go? Go to law school if it's truly something you want to do. If you know that you won't be able to leave this earth without having tried going to law school. If you're trying to get into law school and you've tried year after year after year, you really have to ask yourself if this is the right path for me, if I really do want to do it, if I can live with myself without having done it, but also if me not getting into law school is a sign from the universe, from God, from this world, that I ought to consider another path or perhaps postpone law school. If I could do it again, well, you couldn't pay me. You couldn't pay me to do law school again. You could not pay me to do law school again. But if I could somehow be possessed to do it again, or rather, phrased better, my advice to somebody contemplating law school is there's no reason to do it like I did, which is to do everything bam, bam, bam. So I did undergrad. You know, as soon as I finished high school, I went to undergrad. So I started undergrad at 18. I finished when I was 22. I started law school when I was 22. So no break, just consecutive. I started law school when I was 22 and finished when I was 25, just short of my 26th birthday. I was so young. And if I were to do that over again, or if I had to counsel anybody, I would say to pace yourself, and there's no reason to run right through it. Certainly, I could see the appeal of wanting to get everything over with, which is what I did. But especially in terms of the financial piece, if after undergrad or after you do, like say you did undergrad or a master's or a PhD in another discipline, if you could like work for a little bit, make money, gain some life experiences, and then go to law school, I think it'll serve you better. Because one of my issues with law school is there were a lot of things that we were talking about that I had no real world experience, and therefore it was really hard for me to engage with the topic. So when you're talking about les hypothèques or mortgages, I'd never had a mortgage. Heck, I hardly knew what a mortgage was or what it entailed. When you have a little bit of context and background, when you approach these from a legal perspective, I think at least that gives you a way to ground that knowledge. You know what they're talking about, and you're better able to engage with the information. That said, it's not a mistake of going to law school if you're 22, or if you're just finishing cégep in Quebec, you're like, what, 19? Right, I think you're 19, 18, 19. Going straight into law school, that's not a mistake. Certainly, we had a lot of cégep students at McGill, and many of them, I mean, they were all so mature and so bright, and many of them did very well from what I could see, from what I've heard. But I think those people who went to law school a little bit later in life, so maybe towards their late 20s or even as a second career, I think in some ways they had a leg up. Definitely they had a little bit more financial footing and cushioning, I would think. And also they, I think they were able to attack their studies with a fervor that and an energy that I was unable to muster because I had just expended so much energy in undergrad. At the end of the day, you have to follow your heart and do what's right for you. I mean, it's a clue that if you're not interested in any legal stuff right now, that's maybe a clue that you wouldn't like law school. Like, my parents love watching Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown, all the judge shows, Judge Alex, all the judge shows. I could not stand those shows. Anytime I tell people about law school, they're like, oh my gosh, but what about Suits? You know, Suits. The last thing I wanted to do after law school, after class, is go home and watch a show about law. Like, I did not want to talk about it. Wasn't interested in Suits, How to Get Away with Murder, none of that stuff. That's not to say that if you like Suits, you should go to law school, right? The show. But if you just don't find yourself even now interested in like legal topics, that might be a clue as well. So look at what you're passionate about. This would be my number one piece of advice. Look at what you have a sincere interest in. Like, you could study this ad nauseum. Look at those things that you could study and in depth and stir your career and your education that way, right? Follow your heart, follow your passions. And if you do that, that would hopefully steer you to the right career for you. One in which you'll make money and you'll actually be able to contribute to humankind. Okay? Hopefully that was all helpful. This was much longer than I ever anticipated that it would be. I'm available if you have any questions, because I'm sure that I probably didn't answer all your questions, or what I said provoked some questions. So there's contact information for me somewhere. I don't know where. Maybe down below. I think by the time I actually post this video, I would have gotten my act together and my website will be up. So you also feel free to contact me and look at all the other educational consulting stuff that I do on my website, SimoneSamuels.ca. So SimoneSamuels.ca for more information. So I would love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear your feedback, your questions. Comment down below if anything that I've said has resonated with you. And I'll see you again later on another chat. Have a good day. Bye.